In 1919, Adolf Hitler was recruited into the political department of the German army in Munich. Then, he was sent by Captain Karl Mayr to spy on the German Workers' Party. During one of the party's meetings, Hitler was just about to leave when a man in the audience made a point that he disagreed with, and then he joined in the discussion. Hitler made a speech that impressed Anton Drexler, the leader of the GWP, and he was invited to join the party. Hitler became the main speaker at German Workers' Party public meetings. It was during this period that he developed the techniques that made him into such a persuasive orator. Hitler always arrived late, which helped to develop tension and a sense of expectation. He took the stage, stood to attention and waited until there was complete silence before he started his speech. For the first few moments Hitler appeared nervous and spoke haltingly.
Meine Herren, seit dem 30. Januar hat sich in Deutschland eine Umwälzung vollzogen, die in unserer Geschichte einst mit Recht.
Slowly he would begin to relax, and his style of delivery would change. He would start to rock from side to side and begin to gesticulate with his hands. His voice would get louder and become more passionate.
Unterstell dich mich nicht, die kann mich nicht richten. Dir unterwerfe mich, richte du mich, gib du ein Bekenntnis ab, ob du meine Arbeit für richtig hältst, ob du glaubst, dass ich fleißig gewesen bin, dass ich gearbeitet habe, dass ich mich in diesen Jahren für dich eingesetzt habe, dass ich anständig meine Zeit verwendet habe im Dienste meines Volkes. Gib du jetzt deine Stimme ab. Wenn ja, dann tritt für mich ein, so wie ich für dich eingetreten bin.
Sweat poured of him, his face turned white, his eyes bulged, and his voice cracked with emotion. He ranted and raved about the injustices done to Germany and played on his audience's emotions of hatred and envy. By the end of the speech, the audience would be in a state of near hysteria. The impression left on listeners was one of passion and dedication to the fight, something that again reinforced Hitler as not another politician and someone that would fight for the everyday man. As soon as his speech finished, Hitler would quickly leave the stage and disappear from view. Refusing to be photographed, Hitler's aim was to create an air of mystery about himself, hoping that it would encourage others to come and hear the man who was now being described as the new Messiah. Before the Nazis' rapid ascent to the world stage, Hitler's party was largely unknown, winning a trivial 3% of votes in Germany's 1924 elections. When Hitler decided to compete in the Reichstag, or German parliament, he knew that meant that he had to give speeches, and that meant that he had to speak to as many people as he could in order to get votes. 8 years later, the Nazis were the largest party in the Reichstag. By 1934, Hitler and his political agenda were leading the German government. So, how did Hitler prepare his speeches, and what oratory techniques were applied by him to succeed? Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda minister, wrote in his diary that Hitler was known to write his own speeches and edit them up to 5 times. He would work deep into the night, several evenings running, occupying 3 secretaries taking dictation straight into the typewriters before carefully correcting the drafts. He simply did not want to rely on anyone to write his speeches. The place where he would give the speech was always well chosen by the Führer. If he was going to speak to a few people, a very small space would be necessary. The purpose of this maneuver was to give the impression of a crowded place, to attract the attention of people passing by and to arouse their interest in what was happening. Hitler always used a loud tone of voice without hesitation, convinced of what he was talking about, always used a few words to express his idea and left long pauses between one sentence and another for the listener to reflect on the subject. The language used in his pronouncements was to be understandable, from the most cultured to the most ignorant person. French-American novelist George Steiner describes the Nazi leader's voice as overwhelmingly powerful and spellbinding. I was born in 1929, so from 33 on my earliest memories are sitting in the kitchen hearing the voice of Hitler on the radio. It's a hard thing to describe, but the voice itself was mesmeric. The amazing thing is that the body comes through on the radio. I can't put it any other way. You feel you're following the gestures. Hitler workshopped his delivery, hand gestures, and body language while practicing his speeches. He had to add animation to his language in order to successfully communicate his ideas. Hitler trained by pointing to an imaginary audience, raising his clenched fist, opening his hands as if begging a crowd to get up and frowning in anger. Hitler's personal photographer, Heinrich Hoffmann, captured 2 million images of the leader and was advised to never release a specific series to the public. In 1925, Hoffmann took several photos of Hitler's facial expressions and gestures while he rehearsed speeches in a mirror. After studying the images, the Nazi leader reportedly asked for them to be destroyed. Secretly, Hoffmann saved the photos and published them 30 years later in his memoir. No other photographer in history landed the scoop that Hoffmann did: intimate and exclusive access to a major head of state, and importantly, the chance to work with a subject who knew very well how to work the camera and paid painstaking attention to the cultivation of his public image. During his career, Hitler made several comments on the techniques he used as an orator. The receptivity of the great masses is extremely limited, their intelligence is small, their forgetfulness enormous. Therefore, all effective propaganda must be limited to a very few points, and they should be used like slogans until the very last man in the audience is capable of understanding what is meant by this slogan. The masses will ultimately remember only the simplest ideas repeated 1,000 times over. If I approach the masses with reasoned arguments, they will not understand me. But if I awaken in them the appropriate emotions, then they will follow the simple slogans I give them. In the mass meeting, the reasoning power is paralyzed. What I say will be like an order given under hypnosis. Hitler and the Nazi Party treated the German people as if they were one entity because individuals are rational, think for themselves, and are concerned about their own well-being, whereas groups are unintelligent and easily persuaded. Sigmund Freud stated that groups tend to have the characteristics of weakness of intellectual ability, lack of emotional restraint, incapacity for moderation and delay, and the inclination to exceed every limit in the expression of emotion. Freud went on to say that groups show an unmistakable picture of a regression of mental activity to an earlier stage, such as children. Hitler used this understanding of groups to strategically manipulate the German people. Hitler's inordinate use of trigger words helped him to maintain the support and attention of his audiences and allowed them to get exceedingly excited about his speeches. These words added to Hitler's tactics of persuasion by creating word association. When referring to Germany, he used words that conveyed strength to whip up a reaction from the crowds. These words included sword, fire, and blood. Likewise, he also relied on symbolism, with metaphors such as the eagle and swastika featuring heavily. These would only be used in relation to Germany. When speaking about enemy nations or about Jews and Marxists, he used words that alluded to weakness, his favorite of which was pacifist. He used this term to refer to anything and everything that he disagreed with. To Hitler, pacifism was the ultimate sign of weakness. Another technique Hitler employed in his speeches was the either-or fallacy. By creating a false dilemma in the mind of his audience, he was able to convince them that, although something was unethical, it was the only option. The shallow nature of the group was not able to comprehend that a statement such as, either the German people annihilate the Jews or the Jews will enslave them, is not logically true. These arguments created a sense of urgency in the audience. They were a call to action. The final tactic Hitler used to persuade the folk through his speeches was convincing his audience that the rest of the world thought of Germany as inferior, second-class citizens. This angered the crowd, who had been comprehensively indoctrinated to believe that they were the master race. Hitler offered up as evidence the Treaty of Versailles, which he believed treated the Germans as subhuman. The average German must have thought, how dare those pacifist cowards call us the perfect Aryan race, second class or inferior? He would have doubtlessly been enraged. Hitler furthermore blamed Germany's relegation to second-class status on the Jews, who he claimed both caused Germany to lose World War I and stole wealth that rightfully belonged to those of German descent. The irrational nature of the crowd caused the Germans to be very accepting of this idea and to defer blame to those it felt possessed something of which they were undeserving. The extraordinary impression of force, the immediacy of passion, the intensity of hatred, fury, and menace were conveyed by the sound of the voice alone without regard to what he said. One of the secrets of his mastery over a great audience was his instinctive sensitivity to the mood of a crowd, a flair for divining the hidden passions, resentments and longings in their minds. So, do you think Hitler's oratory techniques can still be applied nowadays? Write your opinion in the comments section and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any history videos.